She came to see her son graduate. Didn't wear a uniform. Didn't announce herself. Just showed up. Quiet plain jacket. Nothing fancy. But the parents in that gym, they didn't like the story her son told. That his mom was a Navy SEAL. So they laughed, mocked, shoved him, then shoved her hard enough to drop her to one knee. And when she stood back up, her jacket shifted. That's when they saw it. A Navy SEAL trident inked across her ribs. Faded, earned, and impossible to fake. The room went silent because in that instant they realized who they'd put their hands on and just how far out of their depth they were. Now, before we show you the second they froze, and how one mother reclaimed her son's honor in total silence, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell icon. Because the story isn't about showing off. It's about showing up. The gym at Oak Ridge High was trying its best to feel important. Blue and gold banners hung from the rafters on thin wires that swayed every time the AC kicked on. Folding chairs stood in imperfect rows across the polished basketball court, some wobbling from uneven legs. White tape marked off the JROTC seating zone near the front. A borrowed podium from the district office leaned slightly left. The school's brass band sat in the corner rehearsing the same 4 measures of pomp and circumstance over and over while the mic on the PA stand popped and fizzed from a frayed cord someone forgot to replace. It was just past 6 p.m. and families were still trickling in. Grandparents in floral shirts, baby siblings squirming in dress clothes, parents juggling phones and oversized flower bouquets. Some stood chatting in clusters near the snack table where lukewarm coffee and sugar cookies sat sweating under cling wrap. Others waved from the bleachers, claiming seats with sweaters or purses like they were beach towels at a pool. 17-year-old Noah Carter stood alone near the JROTC row, scanning the entrance. He looked like a cadet who'd already passed inspection. Sharply pressed dress blues, nameplate gleaming, hair regulation tight, but his fingers fidgeted with the program in his hands, folding and unfolding the corner so many times the edge had begun to fray. "She coming?" Someone behind him whispered. Another voice answered just loud enough to hear. Didn't he say his mom was some kind of soldier? Or is that another one of those stories kids tell? Noah heard them. His jaw shifted, but he didn't turn around. He just kept watching the gym entrance. Then the side door creaked open and she walked in. Mara Carter wasn't dressed for attention. Worn jeans, clean but faded, black leather jacket zipped halfway over a plain shirt. Her dark hair was tied back tight, no makeup, no jewelry. She carried a small box in one hand, wrapped in brown paper and twine. No medals, no insignia, no uniform. She walked with a quiet ease, scanning the room only once before slipping into a seat near the aisle in the 3rd row. 2 empty chairs between her and the nearest group. That group didn't hide their glances. One woman with oversized earrings leaned toward her husband, a PTA board member, and muttered, "That's the SEAL, Mom?" "Yeah, right." Their teenage son snorted and said something under his breath that made the others smirk. Across the gym, Noah spotted her. His shoulders dropped just enough to see the relief, but he didn't wave. He just held the program tighter and breathed like someone finally let go of a pressure valve. The JROTC instructor clapped twice near the podium. "Cadets, form up backstage. We begin in 5. Chairs scraped, conversations quieted. The band struck a clean note and began the opening march. Mara didn't stand or clap. She didn't lean forward like the other parents. She just sat still, calm, watching. And as her son disappeared behind the curtain, the tension in the gym began its quiet crawl towards something no one was ready for. The anthem played. Everyone stood hand over heart, murmuring along as the recording echoed through dusty speakers. Everyone except Mara. She rose like the others, yes, but her arms stayed by her sides, her shoulders square, her chin level. Not disrespectful, not performative, just still like someone who'd done it too many times to pretend anymore. It didn't take long for the parents in the 2nd row to notice. "She doesn't even stand right," Karen muttered loud enough to Carrie. Her perfume was sharp, citrus, and judgment. "Military, please," said her husband, Harlan Brooks, an Army recruiter turned local radio caller. "She's dressed like she works at a tire shop." "That poor kid," added another woman. sipping from a lukewarm coffee cup, making up stories about his mom to fit in. They laughed softly, and Mara heard every word. She didn't turn around, didn't even blink. Karen leaned sideways across the empty chair between them and offered a saccharine smile. "So," she said, "which branch did you say you were in?" Mara turned her head slightly, met her eyes. "I didn't." The answer was plain, not cold, not defensive, just a fact. Karen's smile tightened. She didn't like being denied the reaction she was looking for. "You know," she added, "my sister-in-law's Air Force. They never show up late." Harlan chuckled and leaned forward, voice full of pretend kindness. "No shame in not serving, ma'am. Just don't let the boy build castles on fairy tales. He's a good cadet. Bright." Mara didn't respond. She looked back toward the stage where the cadets were beginning to file in behind the curtain. One of them peeked out for a half-second, just long enough to spot her. "Noah." He didn't wave, but his spine straightened like someone flicked a switch back on. Meanwhile, the row of parents behind her whispered louder now. "She really thinks she can blend in like that. Bet she just got that kid in JROTC so she could feel military adjacent. You don't get tattoos from PX bumper stickers." Their kids picked up the tone. One of the teens, Harlan's son Dylan, pulled out his phone and zoomed in on Mara's back from a few rows away, laughing when he didn't see anything obvious. "Seals have patches, right? Why hide it unless it's fake?" Another student nudged Noah in the hallway backstage. "Your mom's here. Thought she'd be taller." Noah didn't answer, his jaw clenched. He'd heard versions of this his whole life at school, in locker rooms, online. That the idea of a Navy SEAL mom was just a story, that he was overcompensating for someone who wasn't around. That women didn't qualify. That if they did, they wouldn't be someone like her. He tried once years ago to show a picture from a base gate, the one where she stood beside a flag with her unit barely in frame. The comments were brutal. He never showed it again. Now he just breathed slowly and kept looking forward. Because she was here and the people whispering. They were about to find out what a mistake it was to confuse quiet with absence. They called Noah's name right after the band stopped playing. Cadet Noah Carter, Leadership Citation, Advanced JROTC Program. The applause was polite, just enough to be heard. Noah stepped out from the curtain with his posture locked and eyes forward. His stride wasn't fast, but it wasn't hesitant either. His cheeks were taut, not smiling but composed. He reached the podium, accepted the certificate from the JROTC instructor with a quick salute, then turned toward the audience. That's when he saw her again. Mara stood now, not clapping, not cheering, just standing, hands loosely at her sides. Their eyes met for one beat. She nodded once. That was all he needed. He stepped off the stage straighter than he walked on. Back in row 3, Karen leaned sideways again, smirking toward Brooks. "JROTC needs real parents to motivate them," she said under her breath, loudly enough for others to catch. Harlan Brooks chuckled with his arms folded across his chest. "Kid's probably embarrassed. No wonder he doesn't talk much." Mara didn't react. She returned to her seat without a sound. A few more names were called. Then the instructor announced a brief intermission before the final round of commendations. Families stretched, stood, and started drifting toward the hallway and refreshment tables. Some stepped outside to take calls or wipe down fussy toddlers. The gym's noise level rose again, talking, laughing, the squeak of shoes on waxed floors. Brooks spotted Noah standing near the JROTC display board and made his way over, coffee cup in hand. "Son," he said in that too-friendly tone older men use when they're about to be condescending. "You don't need to chase fiction to be proud of your background. There's honor in reality. Be proud of where you come from." Noah blinked. "I am." From across the gym, Mara saw the exchange. Her head tilted slightly, just enough to monitor. She stayed seated still. Brooks's teenage son approached now, all limbs and confidence, hands stuffed in his pockets. "Dude, stop lying," he said bluntly. "Your mom's not military. My dad says he'd know. He was a recruiter." Noah shifted slightly. Don't what?" the kid mocked. "Lie in uniform?" Noah turned to walk away, But Brooks stepped in front of him with a big patronizing smile. "Come on, son. You seem like a sharp kid. You don't have to double down just to save face." Karen had materialized on the edge of the circle now, arms folded, tone syrupy. "Sweetheart, your mom isn't who you think she is. You don't have to make up stories to be respected. People will like you more for being honest." Noah's breath hitched. He looked past them, past the gym doors toward his mother. She was still seated, still watching, and the muscles in her face hadn't moved once. Noah looked back at the group. He didn't argue. He just stepped around them, hands at his sides, heading back toward the JROTC prep curtain. Brooks called after him, "You're better than the fantasy, son. Don't let it define you." Noah didn't look back because what none of them realized, what Mara hadn't even had to say yet, was that fantasies don't leave scars, and what came next would wipe every smirk off their faces. The intermission ended 5 minutes later with a crackle from the gym speaker system. The JROTC instructor's voice returned, this time less polished, more hurried. "Cadets, form up behind the stage. Let's keep things moving." Noah stepped into line behind his classmates near the curtain, trying not to limp from the earlier shove that had gone unaddressed. His knee still ached from hitting the floor last week during drills, and now it throbbed worse from tension. But he stayed quiet. He always did. Across the gym, the same voices had returned to their seats louder than before, riding the energy of intermission gossip. Brooks leaned back with both elbows on his chair, clearly amused with himself. His son kept glancing at the curtain, waiting for another shot to corner Noah. Karen crossed her legs tightly and refreshed her lipstick like she was attending a garden party. The instructor began calling names again. One by one, cadets were summoned for service commendations, GPA distinctions, attendance awards. Noah's line moved slowly. Then behind him, someone muttered, "Still think she's a SEAL?" Noah didn't turn. He didn't answer. "Say it," the voice repeated. "Say she's not. Just say it." It was Brooks's son again, stepping out of line to flank him, chest puffed up, voice louder now. "I said, say it." Noah stared straight ahead, his fingers tightened at his sides. "Lying's not part of the creed, right?" The boy sneered. "You wouldn't want to dishonor the—" Then the shove came. Not theatrical, not cinematic, just hard and sudden. Both hands to the chest, Noah stumbled backward and struck a folding chair. It toppled with a loud crack, sending a stack of printed programs flying. One edge sliced across his forearm. His knee buckled beneath him and struck the gym floor with a hollow thud that echoed louder than it should have. Every head turned. Gasps rang out from a few rows back. Someone whispered, "What just happened?" The JROTC instructor hadn't seen it. He was turned, still adjusting the microphone. Brooks was already up, brushing it off with theatrical nonchalance. He tripped. "It's slippery. Let's not dramatize." The other adults chuckled nervously, grateful for an explanation that would let them avoid discomfort. Noah stood slowly, face red, lip pinched between his teeth. He didn't whine, but he didn't move to fix the programs either. From across the gym, Mara rose halfway. She stood, hand on the back of the seat in front of her, watching. Her leather jacket hung open, her eyes locked onto her son. She didn't move further. She didn't shout. She simply stood and saw. Karen turned and saw her standing. "Looks like Mom's finally awake," she muttered. "Little late for tough love." Another parent added, "If she were really military, she'd have trained him better." More soft laughter. Noah didn't speak. He stooped, gathered a few scattered programs with stiff fingers, and placed them back on the chair. His jaw was set like concrete. He turned toward the curtain, ignoring the JROTC line that had gone still. Brooks, watching Mara, leaned toward his son and whispered something neither of them noticed Mara had heard. And across the gym, her breath came in once through her nose, slow, controlled. Noah disappeared behind the curtain again. But something in the room had shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, just enough for the air to grow heavier, just enough for the temperature to drop a degree. Because what they didn't realize was that restraint was her warning, and they'd already ignored it. The gym had settled back into its uncomfortable rhythm. Parents refilled their coffee. Toddlers fidgeted in chairs. Cadets were nearly lined up backstage for the final awards presentation. And the noise that filled the bleachers was no longer excitement. It was certainty. Certainty that Noah's mother wasn't who she said she was. Certainty that the lie had been exposed in front of everyone. And certainty, fatally, that nothing would happen next. Harlan Brooks made his move first. He rose from his chair with the casual authority of a man who'd been in charge of too many rooms for too long. His steps were confident, intentional. He approached Mara with one hand still in his pocket and the other swirling the last bit of cold coffee in his cup. "You need to teach your boy some honesty," he said smoothly. "It's not healthy for him to carry fantasy on his shoulders." Mara didn't look up. She answered evenly, "Please step back." He didn't. Karen followed close behind, heels clicking with performative outrage. Maybe teach him how to walk without falling, too. That little stunt earlier, he could have hurt someone. Mara finally turned her eyes toward them. Her voice remained calm. "You're crowding me. Step away." Karen laughed. "Oh, relax. We're not trying to start a fight. Just have a little chat." She reached toward Mara's sleeve. Just a graze meant to seem harmless. A fake-out touch. The theater move. Mara shifted back enough to break the contact without breaking posture. Brooks smirked. "Look, lady, we've all played soldier in our youth. Don't let it bleed into your parenting." Then he said it. "See you." He chuckled, turning to make sure others could hear. "Don't insult people who actually served." The group around them murmured approval. Some of the JROTC parents chuckled. Even a few students were watching now, waiting to see what she'd say. Mara's voice was quieter than ever. "This is your last warning. Step away from me." Brooks lifted both hands like he was being cute. "What are you going to do, tough girl? Call in the special ops." He motioned to his son, still standing near the JROTC wall display. "Give her some space," he said. He said, grinning. "Go help her find her seat." That's when it happened. A student, not Brooks's son, but one of the others, emboldened by the laughter, stepped behind Mara and gave a casual shove to her backpack. Not a punch, not a strike, just a disguised push, masked by the chaos. But it was enough. Mara dropped to one knee. Her hand caught the floor with a muted slap, palm flat against the polished gym surface. The laughter stopped. Noah saw it from backstage. His mother on the floor. He gasped, tried to push past the JROTC instructor who grabbed his shoulder. "Stay in line, cadet." Harlan Brooks looked down at her with smug amusement. "See? Told you. Not military material." Mara rose. No words yet. Just a single fluid movement from the floor to full height. The gym didn't realize it yet, but it had just entered a different atmosphere, and the people who shoved her had just lost the last second they were going to get away with it. Mara stood up slowly with the kind of control that drew silence around her, like gravity. No dramatic motion. No flinch. No threat. Just a shift from ground to standing. So deliberate, so quiet that even the noise from the bleachers began to fade. The folding chair beside her rattled as she brushed dust from her jeans, then straightened her jacket at the wrist. Her expression didn't change. She didn't look at the floor, didn't glance at Noah. She only looked ahead, and when she finally spoke, her voice didn't rise. "You touched me," she said to the group. "Don't do that again." The parents blinked, confused. A few chuckled nervously. Karen tilted her head, mocking. "Or what?" Mara turned her head just slightly toward her. "Or you'll learn the difference between confidence and competency." The words weren't harsh. They weren't even sharp, but they cracked something in the gym's atmosphere. You could feel it like pressure dropping before a storm. Brooks shifted his weight, looking for a laugh, but it didn't come. He cleared his throat. "Lady, you're embarrassing yourself." Mara took one step forward. Her hands remained at her sides. "You shoved me. You mocked my son. You assumed things you don't understand." More heads turned now. A few students in the bleachers had begun whispering. A dad in the corner stood like he might intervene. But then he stopped, watching. Brooks's teenage son looked between them all, unsure whether to speak or back away. The shift was beginning, and they could feel it not as guilt, but as fear, because none of this looked like someone about to explode. It looked like someone who'd already decided not to. That scared them more. Then the curtain moved. Noah burst through, ducking out from the side of the JROTC line. "Noah, wait!" the instructor called, reaching for him, but he didn't stop. He ran straight for his mother, breath short, voice shaking. "Mom, are you okay?" Mara didn't take her eyes off Brooks. She simply extended her hand toward Noah and touched his shoulder. "I'm fine." His eyes were wide. His face flushed. He wasn't just scared. He was ashamed. Ashamed that she'd been knocked down. Ashamed that he hadn't been fast enough. Ashamed that the people around them were still staring and saying nothing. But Mara's hand didn't shake. Her posture didn't shift. And the gym, it was finally quiet because it wasn't just her words, or the way she'd stood, or how Brooks had flinched when she stepped forward. It was the realization that they'd mistaken stillness for submission. And now they were all asking the same thing in their heads. Who the hell is she? Brooks's son broke the silence first. He laughed. Too loud, too shaky. "If you're so tough," he said, voice cracking, "show us one thing that proves it." Mara didn't respond. She stood there like a wall. The boy's tone sharpened. "You going to say you're a SEAL again? Then prove it. You got nothing to hide, right?" Brooks stepped in to smooth it over, trying to steer his son back. "All right, settle down. That's not how we..." But Noah turned, eyes wide, voice suddenly urgent. "Don't." Too late. He tried to pull his mother slightly behind him, instinctively protective, but in doing so, his hand brushed the edge of her jacket and lifted the hem. Just enough. The room didn't gasp all at once. It started with one voice. A mother in the second row leaned forward, her face drained of color. "Wait." Someone behind her stood up. "Is that real?" Mara didn't flinch. She didn't tug the jacket back because there, along the curve of her left side, just visible beneath her shirt line and over her ribcage, was a tattoo. Not just ink, not just art. A Navy SEAL trident, large, weathered, faded like only time and salt and war could do. And beneath it, smaller but unmistakable, a number. Devgru 2. Another parent spoke without meaning to. A teenage girl pulled out her phone, then immediately lowered it like she'd done something wrong, just pointing it. Karen was frozen. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Brooks backed up half a step, hand lowering from his chest. The boy who demanded proof took a full step back. That's not real, right?" From the far corner, an older man, Vietnam-era vet, who hadn't spoken all night, said quietly, "That ink's not for show, but that's earned." Noah looked at her, stunned. He'd seen the tattoo before, years ago. Once briefly, when she'd fallen asleep on the couch in a tank top and shifted in her sleep. He'd never mentioned it, never asked, because part of him didn't need to. Now, in front of everyone, he whispered like the air might break. "They didn't believe me." Mara finally moved. She reached down and pulled her jacket hem back into place. No flourish, no spin. "That was private," she said softly, and somehow that stung the room more than shouting ever could. Parents looked at each other in panic. Not because they were scared of her, but because they'd already said what they thought of her. And now they couldn't take it back. Because the woman they mocked wasn't a fantasy. She was what they all pretended to respect. And she hadn't needed a uniform to prove it. Brooks tried to recover. He stepped forward again. Slower this time, his voice straining for confidence. "Tattoos can be faked." It didn't sound like a statement. It sounded like a wish. From the far end of the row, a man in a navy ball cap stood up. He looked 60, maybe more. Lean frame, folded arms, eyes sharp. "That one isn't," he said flatly. Another parent nodded. "I've only ever seen that ink on coffin covers and command plaques." "That's Devgru." A woman near the middle clutched her purse tighter. She whispered to her husband, What the hell did they do to her kid?" No one answered because the energy had shifted again. Not just from mockery to fear, but from arrogance to embarrassment and shame. Mara didn't move. She scanned the room once, then turned toward Brooks, Karen, and the others who had circled her earlier. Her voice was calm, level. "This ceremony is for the students," she said. "Don't ruin it with your ignorance." Brooks looked like he wanted to speak, but didn't have the words. Karen forced a smile that cracked under the weight of it. "Look, we didn't mean anything." Mara turned slightly toward her. "You meant exactly what you said." Then she looked down at Noah. He was standing straighter now, even as his hand trembled near his side. His jaw was clenched, not in anger, but in disbelief, because everything he'd carried quietly for years had just unfolded in front of the people who least deserved to see it. Mara met his eyes. "They owe you an apology." Noah blinked. "You don't have to." She cut him off with the slightest shake of her head, then turned to face the group. "You mocked my son," she said. "You challenged his truth. You cornered him. You put hands on me." Brooks's son looked at his shoes. Brooks cleared his throat. "I didn't know, Mara. You shouldn't need to." The boy spoke first, voice thin. "I'm sorry." Karen's daughter followed. "Me too." Karen hesitated, then muttered, "We're sorry, Noah. All of us." Brooks looked at Mara like he wanted forgiveness, but knew he hadn't earned it. Before anyone could speak again, the JROTC instructor stepped forward from the stage, visibly confused by the frozen silence in the gym. He glanced from Noah to the crowd, then to Mara. "Are we ready to continue?" he asked. Mara gave him a single nod, and just like that, order returned, but nothing about the room would ever be the same. The instructor gave a confused nod from the podium, still unsure what had just unfolded. But he adjusted his notes and continued anyway, calling the cadets back to formation. Noah returned to his place in line, jaw set, posture straighter than before. His classmates didn't say much. One of them gave him a subtle nod. Another shifted away from Brooks's son without saying a word. Whatever noise had filled the gym earlier was gone now. There was a new quiet in the air, not of anticipation, but respect. Uneasy, unspoken respect for the woman who hadn't raised her voice once. Mara stayed where she was, standing near the aisle with her arms behind her back. Not crossed, not clenched, just lightly held like a soldier at ease. The instructor cleared his throat. "This next citation is for initiative and leadership both inside the JROTC program and within the broader student body." He looked up. "Noah Carter." This time the applause started slow then grew. Noah walked forward in clean, sharp steps. He didn't rush. He didn't shrink. When he reached the center of the gym and accepted the award, he didn't look at the crowd. He looked at his mother. She didn't smile. She didn't clap. She gave him a single firm nod, the kind that said, "We see each other," the kind of signal she once gave to squad mates before they stepped into something dangerous. And Noah smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, just enough to show that he understood. When he turned to face the audience, they stood. Brooks stood. Karen clapped. Even the students who mocked him earlier were now on their feet, applauding louder than they had for anyone before. Noah returned to his seat, fingers wrapped around the edge of his award, pulse racing. Not from fear, but from release. Because for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he had to explain who he was. They knew. They all knew. The final cadets received their commendations. The gym lights flickered once as the band began the closing march. Folding chairs creaked. Parents snapped blurry photos. But the loudest thing in the gym wasn't music or announcements. It was the silence around Mara Carter. A silence that didn't ask questions anymore. It only watched like it was waiting for her next move. The ceremony ended with the gym lights dimmed, and the band playing the final verse of "God Bless America." Families poured into the open space near the stage, hugging cadets, snapping photos against the school's JROTC banner. Laughter returned, but softer now, measured. Noah didn't pose with anyone. He stood near his mother, one hand still gripping the certificate, the other resting by his side. The instructor passed him and clapped his shoulder. "Good work out there, Carter." Noah nodded. "Thank you, sir." Mara stood beside him, still quiet, still unreadable. Her presence alone kept a wide perimeter around them. People wanted to say something and didn't, until Brooks approached. Alone this time. No coffee, no crowd. He stopped just short of her personal space and looked directly at Mara. "Ma'am," he began, voice lower than before. "I'm truly sorry. I crossed a line. I made a lot of assumptions." Mara didn't nod. She didn't soften. She simply replied, "Be better to the next kid, too." That landed harder than any insult. Brooks looked down and gave a stiff nod before turning away. Karen lingered near the snack table, not meeting anyone's eye. But her daughter, the same one who had whispered about Mara before the ceremony, approached Noah quietly and mumbled, "I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that." Noah looked at her, then said, "Okay," and turned back to his mom. Outside, the parking lot glowed under orange sodium lights. The flagpole swayed gently in the warm air. Crickets had started up beyond the lot's edge, filling the silence with a kind of peace no one had earned. Mara walked with Noah to the car. She didn't rush. She didn't look back. He opened the passenger door and sat inside. She placed the small wrapped box on his lap. He peeled away the paper slowly, revealing a small wooden compass, not fancy, just well-made. Inside the lid, his initials were carved with neat hand-tool precision. On the back, a message, "Stay pointed to what's true." Noah swallowed. He didn't say anything, just reached across the console and hugged her. Not a side hug, not brief. A full hug, long, unhurried. She placed a hand on the back of his head and held him for a few seconds longer than he expected. Then she let go. They climbed into the car. Mara adjusted the mirrors, started the ignition. At the end of the lot, Noah looked back once toward the gym. Brooks stood under one of the lights, hands in his pockets, watching them leave. He didn't wave, but this time he didn't smirk either. He simply lowered his head once, a quiet, defeated nod. Mara didn't acknowledge it. She made the turn out of the lot and drove on, headlights cutting through the dark, her son beside her, his truth intact, and no one in that gym would ever doubt it again. What would you have done if this happened to your kid? Do you think the apology at the end was enough? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one. Tap that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss what's next. And if someone you know needs to see this, share the video with them right now. We upload daily, so stick around. Check out the video on your screen, and I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.